40.
And we're live.
Tell me when to go.
All right.
And we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome to another Atlas Lens Co. Tuesday telecast with Dan
and B.
Hope everyone out there in YouTube land and Instagram land is having a fantastic day, night, or morning, no matter where you are. We have a pretty fun and interesting topic today, right, B?
Definitely. We're going over Atlas Scope.
And we're also going to have a couple prizes during the telecast for people that want to comment down below with the question and answer. So I've got a couple of questions and I want them answered immediately. Who is your daddy and what does he do? Name the movie that that quote comes from, as well as the character who said it in the comments, and you will get an Atlas Lens Co. hat. That's
Awesome.
Our prize today, right?
Yeah, I think we're doing hats again.
I think that sounds right.
That's one of our better prizes, I feel like.
Got to keep the sun rays off the face as much as possible.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely the most popular thing that we give away here at the office too. So I think it's one of our better prizes.
So for those of us just joining, comment down below. Who is your daddy and what does he do? Name the movie and the character.
We got a winner. Yep.
Oh, ding ding, we have a winner. Should we just say it out loud too? Who's our winner?
SDS 5150, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kindergarten Cop.
And can SDS 5150, can you name the character in the film Kindergarten Cop, not just the actor? But
yeah.
We'll give you a bonus prize if you can answer the name of the character in Kindergarten Cop who said, who is your daddy and what does he do? And while we're waiting, I'm going to crack open a cold one from our sponsor, Hard Ketones. We're going to start the morning with a ginger mule. I've been warned that this is not a great way to start the day because it kind of has gas station medication vibes. But
yeah, it's like not quite alcohol, and it worries me.
They call it keto hall, which doesn't sound great either, but I've had a great experience imbibing these. So shout out to our sponsor, Hard Ketones.
Are we actually sponsored by them?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
In a way, we got free, we got some free beverages. So.
Okay.
SDS 5150, got it. John Kimball.
Wow.
This is Detective John Kimball.
All right. So today you might notice we're streaming in kind of a different setup than usual. We're shooting in a square format, 1080 by 1080, 1:1.
So you might be wondering, how do we achieve an anamorphic image with a square aspect ratio?
Yeah, and we're not cropping or anything. And as you can see, it is definitely an anamorphic image, right? We're getting those horizontal flares. We're shooting on an Orion and getting those blue streak flares. So
and what camera are we using today, B?
Today we're shooting with the Red V Raptor.
Shout out Red Digital Cinema, beautiful 8K V Raptor. Got a 40 millimeter Orion on there. And look at us, we're squares.
Oh yeah.
It's hip to be square, I heard, according to Huey Lewis in the news.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So how do we achieve this? We basically have invented our own little format that we call Atlas Scope. As you can see on the stream, it says presented in Atlas Scope.
And this is fascinating because, you know, the concept of anamorphic lenses and anamorphic filmmaking, if we trace it back to the origins, started as a concern for formats. So they wanted to be able to deliver a panoramic widescreen format movie using a square piece of film. But as time went on, you know, with digital sensors, with multi-aspect ratios, you can extract and deliver all kinds of aspect ratios. So mostly we choose anamorphic lenses for their aesthetic qualities and just the way that they bring you into a movie more and the kind of image that they create. But we also find ourselves challenged with new quests for new formats, for new deliveries, right? So like TikTok, Instagram.
If you're shooting for a social media delivery, sometimes a square or a vertical format is preferable. You know, we could even go so far as to bring up Quibi. Remember Quibi? The long dead
Give me a
streaming
Quibi
service.
to think about this for a second.
Yeah. So I feel like this is kind of our answer to that. Having multiple formats available, shooting square like this does allow you to crop 16:9, 9:16, or stick with a square format. You have all those deliverables all in the same shot in a square format.
And you maximize your pixel density, right? So if you're
Absolutely.
a pixel queen like I am, you're going to get all your pixels in your master recording.
Oh yeah. So how do we do a square format on a widescreen sensor like this, but still use all the pixels?
That is a great question, B. Hopefully you can help us elucidate this.
Absolutely.
There's a couple ways you could do it, but our preferred way, I mean, one of the things we love about anamorphic lenses here at Atlas is vertical oval bokeh, right? And traditional streak flares like you showed a moment ago that are horizontally streaking through the frame. And so those are some of the things that we sort of like want to always embrace when we're doing anamorphic filming, even if it's for a square delivery. But of course, there's a couple different ways we could deliver square format with an anamorphic lens, right? Do you want to elucidate
Definitely.
a little bit about that? And I can give a shout out to Cleon R.A. and his Mercury film that he did for us last summer called La Sommaire. Big shout out Cleon, and it's a beautiful film. And Cleon chose to do vertical anamorphic in a little bit different way than we do Atlas scope, right? So Cleon was also shooting with a Raptor, and he took the Mercury lens and rotated that 90 degrees in the port, in the PL mount port. And all of the Atlas lenses, we cut out all 4 clovers in the corner of the PL mount so you can orient the lens in any direction. And when we first did that, we were like, we don't necessarily know why we need to do this, but it's easy to do, and we figured there'd be some future use for it.
Absolutely. I think it's always important, even if we don't really know what it is, to allow for creative control, right? I think that's something that I've run into a lot of problems with other companies who, I want to do something, but something about the way that they make their product makes it difficult or impossible to achieve, even though technically it should work. So I think that's something that we've really leaned into here, even if it's something as simple as slightly changing the PL mount so that you can mount the lens any direction you want.
Yeah, I love that openness. It gives you more opportunities to try different things, and it's like one of the ethos that I loved about Apple Computer growing up. So like if you look back to the Apple II, there was this huge debate between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and Woz was like, we need a lot of ports in this computer because we want to let hackers basically build whatever they want for the computer. And Jobs was like, it needs to be like an appliance, like you just turn it on and it does stuff. So shout out Woz for including all of those ports, because that's what made the Apple II so popular even after the advent of the Mac, which is a fantastic computer. The Apple II was still going well into the late 80s, like after it should have been long extinct, like even into the early 90s. Like, anybody play Oregon Trail out there?
Oh yeah.
Shout out Oregon Trail, and shout out Lemonade Stand if you've ever played that one. That's like a good entrepreneurial computer game in the Apple II, where you're like trying to make money with a lemonade stand. So I would say that's maybe one of the reasons that we started this company.
Oh yeah, the
Oddly
lemonade
enough,
stand.
Lemonade Stand, yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the other ways that we can get a square format with an anamorphic lens?
Well, teach us.
Yeah. So what we have here, Atlas Scope, is our preferred way of getting this square format with an anamorphic lens.
And big shout out to my wife Sharon for making our Atlas Scope logo that you can see over my midsection here in the stream. And thanks to B for using OBS Studio to put together the stream. Shout out.
Yeah, of course.
Great job.
Glad to do it. So I have a little presentation here kind of explaining what Atlas Scope is. So with your typical anamorphic, as you can see in the top image here, we have the camera set up vertically like a camera would be, and the lens, typical horizontal, basically how you shoot your camera every day. What we do,
especially if you use an Atlas anamorphic lens, typically,
exactly,
right? Because in anamorphic lens, there is a orientation like a spherical lens. You can rotate it any direction, and because it's symmetrical, your image is going to be symmetrical, so it really doesn't matter which way you orient it. Although that's another debate for another time about evaluating a lens on a projector or a collimator, because you can debug certain characteristics of the lens by looking at what field certain performances are taking place. So like you might have a decentered lens where it's better performance on the upper left quadrant and like terrible on the lower right, and that's because some of the optics are tweaked inside the lens
Sure.
build, which is, sorry for the segue, but
Yeah.
interesting
With,
point.
with a well-tuned spherical lens, you can rotate the lens any direction and your image should be largely unchanged. Whereas with an anamorphic lens, right, because we're adding that squeeze factor, that horizontal squeeze, if you flip it, now you're squeezing vertically, your image is totally different, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you were saying, you can shoot that way, and it can have a cool result. But typically, the way you shoot anamorphic, camera, normal orientation, lens, stretching horizontally to get those horizontal flares, to stretch out your screen just a little bit wider. What we're doing with Atlas Scope is we're rotating the camera 90 degrees. So the camera we're shooting with right now, the V-Raptor, we've attached a plate to the side of the camera so that we can have it flipped horizontally. So as you can see in our little visual aid here, we're just rotating the camera, and now our sensor, instead of being this sort of rectangle horizontally here, we're rotating it to now we have a vertical sensor, right? What we're doing though is we're not changing the orientation of the lens. So the lens is still de-squeezing horizontally. So normally with anamorphic, right, if our sensor is this and we have a 2 times de-squeeze, we're stretching it out to here, right? Whereas with Atlas Scope, we're starting with a vertical sensor. So when we stretch it back out, we're stretching to a square format.
L7, baby. Square.
Yeah, what's up?
Agno Surrender is asking, how does the inherent barrel distribution affect the image?
Great question. So thanks for the question, No Surrender, who's asking, how does the barrel distortion affect the image? Well, you're still going to have those same barrel distortion characteristics that we find preferable in our anamorphic lenses. There are other lenses that have pincushion distortion or even no distortion, but you can see sort of the arc of the ceiling here, and there's not any good vertical reference lines out on the edges of the picture here, but I look relatively normal considering how I look. But we find it to be a really preferable way to compose an image. So if you start with that tall aspect ratio sensor like B was saying, and then unfold the picture to become a square again, or near square, you still have that little bit of barrel distortion, and I find that very appealing personally. I find it to be kind of more how I experience the world and see the world. It's like the world is grand around you and surrounding you. So if you're a fan of a fisheye lens or like a near fisheye, or what most people think of as most wide-angle lenses that don't have pincushion distortion, you're probably going to like the barrel distortion characteristics.
Definitely. Actually, that kind of, I have a question now.
Oh, I love that.
In regards to the actual image circle of the lens, right, how does flipping the sensor actually make a difference? Because in theory, the sensor is skinnier than it was. So if we have worse barrel distortion or more drastic barrel distortion around the edges of the image circle, if we're cropping that off, does that mean we have less of that distortion in the frame?
This is a fantastic question. I think especially with the V-Raptor, because it's a 40.96 millimeters, in this case tall, by 40.96 by 21.6 millimeters, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, so it's skinny this way, so you're going to see less apparent barrel distortion in the horizontal portion, but in the verticals, you're going to be able to notice it more. So like, I guess it's the horizontals, I should say, the horizontal top and bottom of the picture will exhibit more barrel distortion, but because we're working within a narrower constraint, which is actually still well within the image circle of an Orion. So we're on a 40 millimeter Orion, which is designed for a 24.89 by 18.66 millimeter dimension. Watch out, everyone. We're going to get into math.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of number talk here. So we're within about a 21 to 22 millimeter wide section currently on the V-Raptor. And we're about 40.9 or 41 millimeters tall, which is taller than the image circle of the Orion, but we're using our 1.4 expander, which will enlarge the image circle just slightly. So we're not getting any corner darkening or vignetting at the top and bottom. But the Orions, it's actually with most anamorphic lenses, you have, rather than an image circle, you end up with an image oval. Fun fact. So with the image oval, the pupil size looks really good in a tall aspect like this because it's generally a taller image oval, and so you get generally more coverage. And so without our 1.4 expander, you will have a little bit of darkening, vignetting with the 40 millimeter Orion on the V Raptor being this tall. With a Komodo, you're going to cover that whole sucker completely. So we love using the Komodo with the Orions without the expander. The ARRI cameras are also great in Atlas scope. Sony sensors like our good friend Chapin Hall used Orions on a vertical FX9 in Atlas scope format actually for his film Every Day in Kaimu Key. So we'll put that in a link to the IMDb. I think you can watch it streaming on Tubi and a couple other platforms that went to Sundance in 2022. Really cool film about some native Hawaiians who are skaters and sort of their coming of age story, figuring out where they're going, who they are, and what's going on in their lives. And they embrace the Atlas scope format for delivering on that film. So huge shout out to Chapin, and check out that film if you haven't seen it. It's pretty amazing. And they didn't use the expander, I don't think. So they really were maximizing the image oval of the Orions on that Sony FX9 sensor.
And we will show the trailer for that film as well a little later in the stream, so we can see some actual footage of what a feature shot in Atlas scope would look like.
Sweet.
Yeah,
can't wait for that.
Definitely. So the next question, right? If we have the camera flipped on its side, how do we shoot? How do we actually make that function on set? Because your camera's D-squeeze settings aren't going to work anymore. Your camera's D-squeeze is only going to work stretching like this.
Good point.
Right? So how do we make that so we can have a usable image on set to have an idea of what our frame looks like? And then how do we deal with it in post?
For our own composition, and then for like directors, clients, all the people who need to see the image, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, great point, B.
So the image the camera is actually recording, right? We can't record it in any anamorphic mode, so we're just recording straight up like you would with a spherical lens. It's going to look like this, right? It's flipped on its side, and it's stretched out kind of horizontally like that, right? It isn't really going to look good on your monitor. So what we can do with a small HD monitor, at least, is flip the monitor on its side so it's vertical. So now we only have to worry about the stretch. We can input a custom D-squeeze of 0.5 because
with a 2x lens, right?
With a 2x lens, right? Instead of stretching it out this way by 2x, we stretch it in, sort of squash it by half, right? You could also think of it as stretching a horizontal sensor vertically, right? It's kind of a weird thing to wrap your head around. Hopefully this image here can kind of help. So what we're doing is we're rotating it 90 degrees and we're squashing it down to get it to be a more normal look with the squeeze.
I think we should invent an Atlas scope dance. It seems like a TikTok thing, right? Where we
just like
this, stop, turn, squash it down. Stop, turn, squash it down.
Yeah, so we can do this in our monitor, right? Just by flipping the monitor and setting a custom D-squeeze. And in post, all you need to do is rotate your footage 90 degrees and apply that same custom D-squeeze. And as far as I know,
Vogue.
as far as I know, all editing software, that should be pretty straightforward to just import all your footage like that. Set up like a macro or something.
I'll leave that to our post experts.
Yeah, that's not me.
That's not my zone.
Your editor can figure it out.
We've seen people do it a lot in DaVinci, in Adobe After Effects, in Adobe Premiere, Final Cut,
Definitely.
Final Cut 7, rest in peace.
All right. So unless we have any other questions or anything else we should explain about how this format works, we could look at some footage of a feature shot in Atlas scope.
And then after that, we could do one more trivia question for a prize, right?
Let's do that, yeah.
All right, cool. I think we're going to have an aspect ratio related question. Just
That's right.
so have your aspect ratio hats on as you're
Oh, yeah.
watching this trailer. Get ready for the question, which will come right after this trailer.
Definitely. So here's the trailer. I'm going to go ahead and get this going. And again, this was shot in Atlascope with the same format. So the camera is flipped 90 degrees, and we're stretching the vertical sensor back out to a more square format. All right, and I do have the trailer muted. I don't know if there was any music or anything in it that could cause copyright issues. So we're just going to look at the visuals
Running
here.
commentary.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see in that first shot, we do still have those horizontal streak flares because the lens is still on its proper axis.
I love the halation around light sources in this, and just sort of the naturalistic feeling.
Definitely. Before I knew much about this movie, I watched some clips from the trailer, and it felt kind of like a documentary, you know, because it really is a very straight up kind of approach to just a day in this guy's life. I think another one of the things that I really like about Atlascope is because we're taking the sensor and sort of making a virtually larger square sensor, so it feels a bit like a medium format stills camera, right? You get that extra depth of field sort of feeling, where you have sort of a wider square image, but we still get the depth of field of, in this case, a 40 millimeter.
It really gives you a very different feeling, you know? It's a great way to recontextualize what you're looking at.
Definitely. It's, you know, conceptually, when Atlascope was first explained to me, I was really not sold on it. I thought it was kind of a goofy format. But then when I actually saw the lens on the camera and I saw the image it was putting out, I really enjoyed it. It was more than I expected. There was kind of a magic to it.
I love hearing that. That's sort of what strikes me too, is that the best way to test a lens is really with your own eyes and own hands to see if it resonates with your creative endeavors and what you believe in. That's something that we fully support here at Atlas. So every Wednesday, you know, besides the Tuesday telecast where we're streaming through these lenses to you live, we invite people into our Glendale, California headquarters here, have some coffee with us. It's a community-centric event. Bring your own cameras, bring your own lenses if you want, test stuff. It's meant for the community to just get together and talk shop, talk lenses. So Wednesday, Lens Day, it's here for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have catered free coffee. It's very good. So 10:30 to 1:30 at our headquarters in Glendale every Wednesday. Come by.
Can't wait to see you. Did you want to toss out the prize question?
Oh yeah, so
Trivia?
for a chance to win an Atlas Lens Co. hat, please write in the comments what aspect ratio was the 2019 film The Lighthouse delivered in. You know, it's shot on, I believe it was shot on XX, right? XX film?
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they used Baltars, Bosch and Lone Baltars.
Yeah, that's right.
Shout out Rochester, New York. Shout out Baltars. It's really odd. In the last 2 days, I've met 2 different people from Rochester who are anecdotally connected without knowing each other through that town, which is like the biggest optical town in the U.S.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's where Kodak started.
Oh,
Xerox
okay.
started there. Bosch and Lomb, who most of us know as eyeglass people, but made the first CinemaScope lenses as we know them. So a lot of history, pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. All right, any answers coming in?
Mason McQuarrie _9 said 149
That's
Mason
exactly
McQuarrie,
right.
you win the prize.
Yeah, I had
Ding,
always
ding.
thought the Lighthouse was just straight 1:1 square format, but I just found out today it was actually shot 1.19 to 1, so not quite square.
Shout out anyone who can visualize the Lighthouse memes. Can anybody see this meme in their head of like, who's that actor in Life Aquatic? Willem Dafoe, yeah.
yeah.
Willem Dafoe in the red hat is like what we think making a movie is like, and then they have a shot. They have a shot of him in the lighthouse, and it's like what actually making a movie is like.
Oh yeah.
It's my favorite meme
Yep.
of the week.
Before you explained what the meme was, and your picture this, all I could picture was Robert Pattinson beating a seagull to death. It's like the number one thing I remember about that movie.
Seagull fights.
Yeah.
I think they were recreating that feud between Peter Griffin and the chicken.
Yeah,
But
that
in a
was their
different
main
time period.
goal
That
in the
was-
lighthouse. That was the primary focus of that movie was as an artifact of Family Guy.
Shout out. Shout out, Seth
shout out
MacFarlane.
to Family Guy.
Cool. Well, and also shout out to our sponsor, Hard Ketones.
Oh yeah.
Keeping me loose and on the move. All right. Well, it's been a wonderful Tuesday telecast. I don't know about how it's been for you. I thought you did a
Yeah, I
great
feel
job
like it's been
explaining Atlas
productive.
Scope. And I'm excited to get into the rest of today. Hope everyone else out there is having a great Tuesday, no matter where you are. And thank you for tuning in again to an Atlas Tuesday telecast. And hope to see you next week or see you at our Glendale, California headquarters tomorrow. All right.
Yeah.
Dan out.
See ya.